Now the Mahindra B6E, it's a completely new brand, and as the name suggests, that smart funny name aside, it's also supposed to be the more stylish, the more fun, the more aspirational, if you will, of the two SUVs that Mahindra is launching from its INGLO EV architecture. So let's get behind the wheel and see if it really is a step above from what you would expect from a Mahindra in terms of how it drives and how it feels inside. Now the B6E's rear-driven motor, it makes about 285 PS and 380 Newton meters, which makes it about as fast as an Indian-made car has gotten in recent times, and it'll do 0 to 100 in 6.7 seconds. So yeah, by any measure, this is a quick car. But I must say that if you're not used to driving something this fast, if you're grown up on, say, a fairly mainstream car, which this also is, but yeah, it's taken things a step forward, it's easy to get used to. So the responses, they're not jerky. The torque, it comes on in a measured, clean way. There's not a big slug of torque that's just hitting you as soon as you get off the line. And that's true for every drive mode. So effectively, you can use the range mode as an everyday mode. It doesn't get too lethargic, at least as long as you aren't using it on the highway. And yeah, so it just builds power fairly linearly, very progressively. And a good thing is that it keeps building performance. It doesn't have that tendency to sort of taper away its performance as you hit triple-digit speeds. So yeah, even long distance driving, it has the range to do it. It does so well. The INGLO architecture uses a 59 kWh pack, or the larger 79 kWh one seen here. The cells seem to have been sourced from BYD, feature the blade battery tech and cell to pack construction. In our time with it, we noticed that the B6E doesn't show a heavy drop in efficiency in higher speed driving. The ARAI range number 682 for the larger battery pack, so 400 to 450 kilometers can be expected in the real world. The B6E can DC fast charge at up to 175 kilowatt and AC charge at 11 kilowatt. It also has some of that heft, that refinement that you want in a car, and that Mahindra seems to be going for with these new EVs. It has some of it. So you do notice that it feels fairly quiet and premium on the move, even at high speeds. It's fairly refined, and you also find that in terms of the way it rides and handles, it's quite stable at highway speeds. So the big fat tires, of course, help with that, but generally all the work that Mahindra has done with the suspension, it seems to give you a car that you feel sure-footed in. Now, some of the things I would have liked to be slightly better. Maybe the steering could have been a bit more, it's quite direct. It has that variable ratio to it, which means it's always fairly direct, but I would have liked a bit more heft to just accentuate that feeling. But more importantly, the brakes, I feel, could have had a bit more weight to it, because they're actually tuned fairly well. So the transition from the regen to the physical brakes, you barely notice it. You have to look quite hard to actually notice it. So with that, you do want a bit more feel coming in through the pedal, which sadly isn't there. Now, we couldn't go to the high-speed track, but what we can do is use the handling track, where I've managed to get up to 133 at MSPT Mahindra's proving grounds. And I must say that on a smooth, flat road such as the ones we're in right now, this car again feels very planted, very comfortable, very steady and sure. But over broken roads, you do notice that this is a firm car, especially say speed breakers or rough patches, which we got while we were coming here. Now, in terms of the way the B6E handles, again with that whole EV architecture, with the really fancy suspension setup that Mahindra has put into this, with the slightly adjustable dampers and the more complex front suspension, it handles, it feels cohesive, it feels light on its feet, it doesn't feel heavy or wallowy. Now, while EVs always have that advantage of having that weight low down and managing their mass well, this does that to a slightly better degree. Now, the bigger tires and wheels also give it a greater degree of help. The B6E is one of the more outrageous looking cars you can buy in the mainstream SUV segment, but it has been done well enough to not feel like too much of a departure. The short overhangs, the massive air curtain and the black around the front do well to give this car a sharp hunkered down look. Now, with this INGLO architecture being specifically designed for EVs, Mahindra has been able to really work on the packaging, and you notice that with this, it has a Frunk. Yes, it's a bit difficult to access, to be honest, with this really neat aero motif that they've incorporated here, but once you are inside, these gas struts do help. And you do notice you have 45 liters. Now, this is all right. You can put your charging cable, maybe a few small bags of groceries here, but yeah, something larger would have actually been better. The sculpting too is well thought out. It has a bold angular theme that goes well with the aggressive coupe shape. You notice a good deal of textures all around, especially at the back with the neat diffuser element. The heavy rake to the roofline is well managed with the way it meets the high deck lid. We would have liked the rear wheel wells to have less of a gap, but the haunches here work very well with the overall sculpting. Now with coupe SUVs, you're always left wondering about how practical it actually really is. But in the case of the BE6e, Mahindra I think have done a decent job. The boot space itself is 455 litres. And as you can see, while the lip is quite high, you still get a spare wheel. Now it's not the full size spare wheel, it's 18 inches, the wheels are 20, but it's still there, which is a good thing. You also get a 60-40 split, small charger here, 12 volt, a hook, and yeah, powered operation as I said. And here's a neat touch, you get these other lights to show when the boot is open so that you know something doesn't come and hit you. You still have 207 mm of ground clearance and some fun bits like the equalizer themed light show, a feature that lets you monitor the car's surrounding like Tesla's Sentry mode, UV cut glass all around and NFC entry. Now the BE6e, while it really has that striking look on the outside, even on the inside you will be really quite surprised and taken aback by how special and different it feels, at first glance at least. First of all, this EV architecture has let Mahindra become a bit freer with how to design their cars, and that really shows. So first of all, going with that really aggressive driver-focused theme that they're playing with this car, you have this kind of cockpit view. Now, to be honest, it doesn't feel like a gimmick. It actually works, and yeah, you do feel a sense of being a bit closer to the car than what you might otherwise. The air vents are sort of split with that whole arrangement. So yeah, maybe if you are used to adjusting vents between the two front passengers, that will be a bit difficult. But other than that, I don't see any other reason why this will not work. Keeping with that, I really do like the various elements that have been incorporated into the design. The first being, of course, this one. You have this steering wheel. Now the BE brand or the B brand has a different steering wheel. It's this squircle shape. And I must say it feels nice to hold. The material is quite nice. You have these buttons for the regen to control here. I am not exactly sure about the order personally. Maybe the plus to increase regen could have been on the right and the other way around to what it is here. But other than that, I don't really find any fault in it. There's also a boost function button here and the one pedal driving button. Among other neat touches, I like the kind of materials that have been used. So this sort of rough textured finish that you have here, this pull tab for the door latch, and just the really tactile heavy feel that you have in the window controls. That's quite nice. Having said that, these stocks, they're taken from say the XUV 700 and they don't go with say the controls for this or this shifter for the gear lever that is designed around fighter jets, going with that whole aggressive theme of this package. But other than that, ergonomically I really quite like it. This low sill gives me a good view out. I have a head-up display, which is not the slightly cheaper kinds with the mirror in front of you. It actually projects onto the windscreen, so that's nice. I can rest my hands here like this. So that way it's great. You do notice that despite the really great materials, you have soft materials pretty much everywhere. All the touch points have this really nice soft materials. All of this that you see is soft. You do notice that maybe there are some bits where the plastics, the gaps are a bit larger than what you were expecting. The bits don't align in this sort of cowl-like designs. This bit here somewhat doesn't align. But those are small nitpicks. Having said that, what will be slightly more troubling in a day-to-day situation will be the lack of buttons. Yes, you have these new screens which I'll get to, but around here there are no real buttons to control the climate controls or the drive modes, which I found can get slightly irritating when you're living or driving with this car. But having said that, there is good storage, there's good practicality. That EV sort of setting gives you a big compartment here to leave stuff, 2 wireless chargers. Sadly, you get only one cup holder. I don't know why that is. Maybe there was space here for another, so they could have just put it in. 2 Type-C chargers. They're a bit difficult to see, but they're not that very difficult to use. You also have fairly large door pockets. They do fit a couple of bottles, large ones, so that's not a concern either. Going with those very different touches that you haven't seen in cars in this segment before are these. You have these toggle type switches. They control some functions like the 360-degree cameras, the auto park feature and the boot or the lighting. And I must say that once you get used to it, they'll be nice, and of course there'll be a big talking point among your friends or family when you carry them around here. Now let's get to the screens. These have taken a big leap forward from what say you get in the Thar Rocks or the XUV 700. They now come powered with a Qualcomm processor, which is supposedly the most powerful that you have in the auto industry for these. And I must say that just in terms of its functionality, it seems to work. It has this widget type layout, which is fairly easy to use, fairly crisp and responsive, which is a good thing. There's no lag, there's no delays like how you had in, say, the XUV 700, where the transitions weren't quite so smooth. That all that has gone. So it's a good high-tech system that really feels at par with everything else that you might have in any other brand. And then Mahindra has gone to town with just the kind of equipment that they've packed into this. For example, you have a camera that detects your expressions. If you're feeling drowsy, it'll keep popping up, but there's an actual camera. You can also take selfies and videos with that, which is pretty neat. And then of course you have the usual wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay functions, a host of entertainment features that have been added here, right down to Instagram and so on, aside from YouTube and all of those. And there's also some neat dials that give you a lot of information about the car. For example, I can go directly to any part of the car and decide how I want to make it work, use the ambient lighting, use the head-up display and so on, control my vents and charging, all of that. So in that respect, it seems somewhat derived from a Hyundai Kia system, but it has been executed well, so I'm not worried about that. Having said that, like I just mentioned, what is a bit irritating is that there are no physical switches for the climate control, so you have to keep pressing a few buttons to get to functions like the fan speed and so on. And aside from that, again, like most good infotainment systems, they also have a fairly elaborate display to tell you about your charging details, which is also pretty decent. Now this screen, again, it does broadly what you want a driver display to do. So it'll give you the basic kind of analytics, it'll give you your driving assist features, your navigation right on here. You have inbuilt navigation here, all your trip data and so on. And yeah, it's fine. I mean, I would have liked, to be honest, the range indicator and the power indicator or the regen indicator to be a bit larger. They're just spread out on the side and I have the speed in the middle. I would have liked for that to be a bit more visible, but again, like I mentioned, for these screens, they work smoothly, the transitions are crisp, so it's not something that you find very difficult getting used to. And of course, you also have a few mood settings here, which changes the ambient lighting. The patterns on the sunroof, they also change. So they have tried something to bring you that sort of mood kind of feeling here. And to a certain extent, it works. So overall, I do like the infotainment package, and this really is a striking, smart car to have. And just to round everything off, you get a Harman Kardon speaker, which Mahindra says it has done a lot of work with, and it really does sound quite nice. The B6E is packed to the brim with features. Here's what you get. Safety too has taken some big strides. There's a new self-park feature that you can use from outside the car, a more advanced ADAS system with better obstacle detection, 7 airbags including a knee airbag and an interior camera to monitor attention levels. But we did notice that the B6E needs some time for the hill hold to act. Now with this very aggressive coupe shape and this dark cabin, you would expect to feel a bit cramped inside the back of the BE6E. And yeah, that's how it does feel to an extent, but Mahindra, given that again this is EV specific architecture, they have been able to carve out a fair amount of space for what is a 4.3 meter long SUV. To start with, yes, that thing of there being a high floor, that is there, which does mean that even though with this well contoured seat, I do find that I could do with a bit more thigh support. But it's not much, it's something that you can live with, and yeah, it's not as much of a deal breaker as you might think. But I have a lot of legroom, as you can see. I can tuck my feet underneath. Even if I can have the seat pushed back a little bit more and I'll still be quite comfortable. And while headroom is compromised, I am 5'6", maybe someone taller will find it to be tight, but Mahindra has been a bit smart about it. This panoramic sunroof does give you a nice big feeling, a feeling of airiness that somewhat compensates for the small rear window that you have here. Now the backrest itself, I think it's best for while it's wide enough for 3, I do find that with the contouring, 2 people behind will be the most comfortable. It goes with that sporty sort of demeanor or sense of this car and wants to sort of hold you in place tight. It feels a bit like a VW in that regard. And you do get this center armrest. Now I must say, like in the front, the materials here are really neat. You don't have as much soft materials here as in the front, but they're still there around here. But that texturing here and that mix of leatherette and fabric on the seats, I think that's really quite smartly done. And you also have a third headrest, which is quite neat. You find these in premium cars, right? This sort of plastic casing for the seats. They may not have the same finish as some premium cars, but they do give you that similar sense of premiumness. Now going further, you get these AC vents here. There are no real controls here, just vents, and I find that they aren't very adjustable, but okay, it does the job. And you have a small pocket here and Type-C chargers around here, and also a hook to hold your devices. And in terms of space, yes, you do have some bottle holders here. They're not especially big, but you can hold, say, one bottle here fairly easily. Now you will notice that Mahindra has tried to do a few things to make your life easier when you're getting into the B6E. For example, the doors open 90 degrees, which is great, and the ledge and the floor are roughly at the same level. And this is a good thing because, as you will notice, while getting in, this low roof, it more often than not gets in your way. So you have to always remember to tuck in and get in. And it's, yeah, you have to do it in every car, but it's a bit more apparent in this one. We still don't have prices for the top spec versions of the Mahindra B6E, just the starting price of Rs 18.90 lakh. Mahindra may have been a slow starter in the EV game, but this coupe SUV shows that they have used their time well. The design theme inside and out, the features list and the packaging make it desirable, and this is backed by a driving experience that feels premium and reasonably engaging. Yes, we would have liked for a slightly better ride and a touch better quality in patches, but these are minor glitches in what is a massive leap forward for the brand and in what you can expect in an EV out of India. This, as long as Mahindra manages to keep prices in check, and there's enough here to lure buyers back into EVs.